Dr. Marguerite Jackson Dill. Marguerite has been such a dedicated volunteer for many, many years when she was working, but of course, since retirement. She's volunteered for the university, for the Retirement Association, and has dedicated many hours of volunteering for her profession of healthcare. She's been a dedicated mentor to a number of Chancellor Scholars, and she served as vice president and then president of the Retirement Association for 2 years. She also served as the chair of the Emeriti Mentor Program. So she has just kept on giving. And then statewide, Marguerite actually served as the UCSD Retirement Association representative to KUCRA, the statewide association of all of our UC retirement associations. She did that for a number of years. And in addition to that, she chaired or was one of the key members on the data analysis team for the survey of retirees that KUCRA conducted. So as you can see, she's just been an incredible volunteer. And then the one that I really want to mention is Marguerite has been a diligent mentor for the Preuss School. In 2003, Marguerite joined the HIP program at the Preuss School, which is the Health Information Partners Program. And with that program, she helped arrange site visits for students to visit and meet with health professionals as a means of learning about health occupations and opportunities. She has been a dedicated mentor to over 20 young women, providing guidance and helping them navigate higher education and their career choices. In recognition of her incredible work and devotion, Marguerite was awarded the Spirit of Preuss Community Award in 2009. Helping Marguerite today is our dedicated volunteer, Donna Mulcahy. Donna has been a regular volunteer with the Retirement Association. I think she is our top knitter of NICU preemie caps. She has delivered literally hundreds upon hundreds of NICU preemie caps. She is a regular mentor in the Emeriti Mentor Program as well, and has always helped us whenever we've had major in-person social events, such as our open houses and art and music soirees. We certainly can't wait until we're able to get back to doing those wonderful live events. So at this point, I'd like to turn it over to Marguerite and Donna. Take it away, ladies.
So today we're going to do two things. We're going to do puff pastry in two different forms. Puff pastry sheets come from Pepperidge Farm. They are in the frozen section of the grocery store. Sometimes you have to ask where they are. They tend to somehow or other get on the bottom shelf with the dessert stuff in at Vons or wherever you shop. So they come 2 to a box, and we're going to use some pastry, puff pastry today. The first thing that we're going to make is a galette, which is a French tart that is in a free-form design. We use the puff pastry on the base. A lot of people do a galette with pie crust, but I prefer the puff pastry. It has a little bit more pizzazz, and it's also easier to manage. Now, I've cut up several different kinds of vegetables, and you have the recipe. This particular one we're doing today is vegetarian with leeks, mushrooms, zucchini, and spinach. But I want to make you aware of a wonderful, simple way to do it, which is with this 1 pound package of Power Greens or something of that name from Costco. They come 4 pounds to a pack, and this has broccoli and green beans and edamame and squash in it. This is all your green vegetables already ready to go and all cut up. I usually thaw it out and drain off the liquid and then use it instead of the many different preps that are required. So we're going to start by sauteing our leeks in the frying pan or in a pot over here at the stove. And I saute them in butter. You can never have too much butter. I'm a fan of Julia Child. So we'll melt the butter for the leeks, and then we'll let them saute briefly, and then add the other vegetables to them. While we're waiting for that to happen, I'm going to prepare the puff pastry. I put a little flour on my board here. So all of this is mise en place, and mise en place, which is French for having everything you need ready. So I take the puff pastry sheet, put a little Wondra flour on it, and roll it out so that it's nice and flat. Puff pastry is pretty easy to work with, and put it on and then we'll see how that goes. And then we put it on a baking pan with the paper on it, and we start with a base of Gruyere cheese, and we just sprinkle that cheese on the bottom. Now I've got my pot ready to go with the butter. We're going to saute some leeks. The leeks I prepared by cutting up and then washing them very well in the sink with cold water, because the leeks tend to get grit in the leaves of the leeks, and so you certainly don't want to serve something with grit. So very important to wash them well, and I cut them up first and then wash them well so that we can cook them and just saute them lightly in the butter. All right, looking at our recipe, we've got the butter, we've put the leeks in, and now I'm going to add some rosemary and oregano. I didn't have any thyme, but it doesn't really matter. You can use any of the Italian spices. Just mix that in with the leeks. And I'm going to go ahead and mix in a generous amount of mushrooms that have been prepped and cut up. Because this is fairly dry, I usually will add about half a cup of white wine. Like Julia Child says, I love cooking with wine. Sometimes I even put it in the food. And I actually do put white wine in food quite a bit, and usually have a glass to cook with that I enjoy while I'm at it. That's part of my cooking routine. So now we have a little bit of moisture in here, and I'm going to go ahead and add the rest of the vegetables, which is, I added zucchini because I happen to have one. And I thought that that would give us a little bit of additional flavor. So we're going to put the zucchini in and stir that around, and then put some frozen spinach. So You want the spinach to be fairly dry. Some of the spinach comes frozen and it's quite dry and you don't even need to drain it. So that depends entirely on the brand. But as you can see now, we have quite a nice mixture of leeks and zucchini and mushrooms and spinach, which is a medley of vegetables. In fact, this evening, I'm having a dinner party for 6 people. And instead of having a salad, I'm going to start with the soup as a first course. And then I'm going to have the galette as a vegetable dish, accompanied by some rice pilaf. And then for the protein, I'm going to have a roasted salmon and also a herb crusted tenderloin of beef. And that's what I'll do for the dinner party. And then my neighbors who are coming as guests are bringing an apple pie. So I think that will be a rather nice evening for 6 people. And I figured since I was cooking, I might as well have a dinner party. Okay. I think this is ready. So let's bring our pot. Put this back in the freezer. So we have looking at the recipe, we've done all the cooking, and now we want to add some Boursin cheese and some mustard to the mixture off the heat. That Boursin cheese turns out to be an absolutely wonderful invention because it has so much more flavor than cream cheese, and it serves the same purpose. So I've put a nice dollop of mustard in our mixture and stirred it around well. And then I use about half. I like the garlic and fine herbs brand of Boursin. You can get a 3-pack at Costco for a very reasonable amount of money. And that's what it looks like. So I usually just take about half of one of these and add it to our mixture. Cut it up in a little bit smaller pieces. It has the texture of cream cheese, but it has so much more flavor. So whenever you have a savory recipe that calls for cream cheese, and if you want to make it a little bit more flavorful, it's certainly worthwhile to use the Boursin instead of the plain cream cheese. So then this gets all mixed up around. Is it smelling good, Donna?
Smells good.
Looks pretty, smells good. Now, I don't usually add extra salt. There's, of course, there's salt in the Boursin. You can, out of deference to all of us seniors and trying to be prudent about salt, I don't usually salt it. There's plenty of flavor and plenty of salt in the mixture with but if you taste it, and also cheese, of course, has quite a bit of salt as well. So the next step is we take our prepped surface here. And we add our wonderful contents of this galette. And you want it to be kind of mounded up. And it's fine for it to be kind of high, because that's the way it works. It makes a very pretty presentation when it cooks. And you don't want too much liquid. So that's our lovely. And we'll add a bit more cheese to the top. And then pull the edges up around, kind of pleat it and tuck it around the edges. Squish it together well so that it stays. Isn't that pretty?
Just hold it up to the camera.
See this lovely
That
galette?
looks lovely, Marguerite.
And then we take some egg, just a plain egg that's been kind of beat up. And we want to put a glaze on the puff pastry so that it looks pretty. We put this all around. I want to lose my form here. And I usually just kind of put whatever is left over around the edge. Doesn't really hurt. And a little bit on the top. And now we're ready to pop it in the oven. So there is our galette. We've got, have followed all of the instructions. And now we'll put the galette in the oven on at 375. We'll set it in for 20 minutes. See how it's. So that's part one.
Marguerite, your sound went out for a minute. Can you repeat what you said when you were over by the oven?
Oh, I said I put it in an oven at 375 and I set the timer initially for 20 minutes. We'll look at it and see how it's doing. At 20.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Okay, our next job is to make tomato soup. And the tomato soup goes in the ramekins. And we use puff pastry again for the topping. So to make the tomato soup, if you go to the next recipe, the first thing we want to do, and we've got all of our ingredients right here, is we want to saute some onions and garlic. So we put that in a pot. I'm a big fan of Le Creuset, these wonderful pots, which are very heavy to move around, but they work extremely well. So we're going to put the butter, a little splash of olive oil, in the pot. Let it get hot. We're going to saute the onions and garlic. So while that's heating, let's prep the rest of our materials. So we're going to need 3 cans of tomatoes. I like the Costco brand of diced tomatoes. This is an extremely handy little gizmo for those of us whose hands don't work so well anymore. And we're going to open 3 cans of tomatoes. All right. And we're going to see now if almost ready to put our onions and garlic in here. All right, we'll let this cook a little while. Now, the objective with the soup is that it ends up being put in a Vitamix so that it's pureed at the end. I like to use the Costco chicken stock because we need some additional liquid, and I just use good old-fashioned can opener. Have it ready to go. Okay, now looking at our recipe, we've got the onions cooking, and then we're going to add the tomatoes, the stock, some white wine, the tomato paste, and some salt and pepper. Okay. So I've got a little can of tomato paste. We'll use about half of it. Okay. One of the nice things about doing this tomato soup is once the tomato soup has been cooked, you don't really have to cook it all the way because it's going to cook again when it's cooked in the ramekins. So I'm going to, it says to let it cook for about 20 minutes. I don't think we'll do that today because obviously we don't want to just sit around and wait for it to cook. And it won't hurt to shorten that time. So where we are with the recipe now is we're cooking the onions and the garlic. I like to mix those together. And I'm going to bring it over here and mix all of these things together for us. These are wonderful little things my sister-in-law gave me for Christmas. All right. That's awfully hot. I don't want to melt my surface here. Okay. All right, so here's my tomato, onions and garlic. You can see that. Then we're going to add the tomatoes, complete with the liquid. we're going to add about half a container of tomato paste, a half a cup of white wine, and 2 cans of chicken stock. Okay. Had left over from earlier. So. Then I'm going to do a little trick. These are cheese rinds, and by putting the cheese rinds into the soup, it gives it a little bit more depth of flavor. And of course, we take those out before we grind it up. So we mix all of this together. We check our recipe. It says put all of those things together and a little salt and pepper. I will add a little salt and pepper to this. So I've got my salt and pepper pigs here. I'll add a little dab of pepper. I'll add a little dab of salt, not much. Okay. Stir that around. Add the rind. Okay. And bring this back over to the stove. See how fast that'll cook. That show you how this is coming along. Okay, this is about 10 minutes in for the galette. You can see that it's starting to cook nicely. Cook that.
I have to tell you, I wish you were here. It smells so good.
So we're going to let that cook a few minutes. So do we have questions from people, Suzanne, or?
Well, if anyone would like to ask a question, we're a small enough group. Go ahead and just speak up.
Because we've got about 10 minutes that needs to cook.
Okay.
Anybody?
Linda, go ahead.
Hi, everybody, and thank you, Marguerite. This is a lovely presentation, and I'm anxious to make both of these recipes that you're demonstrating. I'm a newbie to this series as well as the Retirement Association. So I'm wondering, are these recipes that you're doing, are they made available to us in written form?
Check
yes,
your email,
Alicia.
Linda. It's in your email.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yes, they are. Just a little bit of other questions, anyone?
Marguerite, I like everything spicy. I think I've said that in a lot of other food demos. So I buy tomatoes that are with habaneros already chopped up in them.
Sure.
You can do substitutions, right? Yeah.
Yes, yes. One of the things that is wonderful about cooking, especially if you cook a lot or enjoy cooking, is you start with a basic recipe and then you fix it, add things to it to make it more consistent with what you like. So yes, if you like it more spicy, you can do the pre-made tomatoes that already have the habaneros in it, or you can cut up jalapenos and add those in. What we're going to use is basil. This is I use a lot of basil in this particular recipe. last night. I washed it and soaked it in the sink to rehydrate the basil. This is from Trader Joe's. I think it's like $3.95 or something. And I use all of this because I like to have a lot of basil flavor.
That
So
is some beautiful basil.
yeah, it is. It makes a big difference to soak it in the sink and rehydrate it, because it gets kind of limp, and that washes it and rehydrates it. And then I just put it back in the container with a paper piece of paper on the bottom so that it absorbs the water, and usually put a piece of paper towel on the top. So this then goes directly into the blender when we're ready to mix it up.
And Marguerite, for your galette, you're making a large one. I'm assuming then you're going to put out the whole big, beautiful one,
Yes.
and then cut it up and slice
Yes.
it like a pie. Could
Yes.
that also be done in individual sort of ramekins?
Well, you wouldn't do it in ramekins because ramekins have sides. And what you want with a galette is for it to be on a flat surface. So if you wanted to make individual ramekins, you could take a baking pan and you could cut your puff pastry, a small, maybe 4 pieces of puff pastry, and put a small amount in it and fold it up around it so that you do the same recipe, but with an individual amount. And then you could bake it, and then you could serve it as individual galettes.
That's wonderful.
That works.
I love it.
That works. But you want it to be on a flat surface, because if you make it in the first place, puff pastry doesn't do well inside of something. So you either need the puff pastry on the top, or you need the puff pastry on a flat surface that you fold up. But I think individual ones would work just fine and you could do more than one sheet, because you want to have enough space around it so that you can fold
I
it.
really liked that as a menu idea, as actually serving that as your vegetarian, side dish with the fish. That sounded really nice as a menu suggestion.
Yes. I think that let me find here we go. We're going to use this again. Our little, I'm going to do some more, because we're going to do the little ramekins. So in terms of background, how I got interested in cooking, while we're waiting for this to cook. Several years ago, when I retired, I thought I might want to do a little bit of catering. I had actually done quite a bit of parties and dinner parties. My son graduated from UC Irvine, and he had a group of very close friends, about 6 or 8 guys that he had grown up with. He went to the bishop school, and some of them were his bishop's friends. And so every year in August, we had, that's my coffee pot, sorry. Every year in August, we had what we call the Milestone Celebration Dinner. And this was a dinner that we had for 20 people. So I set the dining room up like a banquet with 20 places, with the Waterford and the Sterling and everything. And it was a 5-course dinner. Well, I couldn't manage serving a 5-course dinner by myself. So I enlisted the help of half a dozen of my women friends, and they became the wait persons extraordinaire. And so we did 8 of these Milestone Celebration dinners over the course of 8 years. My son was the last of his group to get married. He was almost 40. And when he and his fiance had their dinner before they married, then that was the last of the Milestone dinners. I also did about 4 engagement parties for my son's friends over the course of that same period of time. And so it was quite an undertaking. Somebody counted and said that for a dinner for 20 people, we had 300 items that had to be washed by hand. So I had my wait persons extraordinaire do kitchen duty, and we would serve the guests, and then we would go to the backyard and have our own party. And we had a lot of champagne, and we had a lot of good food, and we just had a parallel party on the outside on the patio while we were doing this dinner party for these young people. So I got to the point where I really enjoyed doing the cooking, and then when I retired, along the way, after I had fully retired, which was not until 2010, I went to cooking school. And I went to a wonderful cooking school in Laguna Beach called Laguna Culinary Arts for a 1-month short course where 3 days a week for 4 weeks, I went from 9 in the morning till 2 in the afternoon and learned from 3 wonderful French chefs. And so that gave me a real foundation for French cooking, which I've always liked to do. And I've spent a lot of time reading Managing the Art of French Cooking by Julia Child, and of course, many, many French cookbooks. But having that experience with the French chefs was really quite wonderful. It also made it very clear that I did not want to go into the catering business because the catering business is way too much work. But it did give me a lot of good tips and good experience and good knowledge for dinner parties that I like to do and I've done for years. So that's kind of my background with cooking. I probably have 250 cookbooks. And of course, I'm a big fan of online Epicurious and the websites online. So that's a lot.
I've got to add to that, and that is that Marguerite was one of the key people training up all of our students in the preparation of our many beautiful hors d'oeuvre displays for our open house and art and music soirees. So thank you very, very much for that, Marguerite. You got a whole batch of students trained up in the art of beautiful presentation of hors d'oeuvres.
Well, and I think the other thing that we did back in the day, we had a couple of Kukra meetings here before yes. COVID and before we got so shut down about food. And I did the catering for those events as well.
Yes.
I've catered several weddings. The biggest one was an August wedding in Point Loma for 100 people. I did a reception. I did another one for about 75 people and for a friend in Rancho Santa Fe. Those are things I've done for friends. I haven't done those as a business. And my husband said the liability is too great. No, we are not going to have you go into business. So you just do it for fun. So that's what I did. All right, I hear my little noise maker. So let's see what our galette looks like. Oh boy, it's looking good. All right.
Oh, that is gorgeous. Good.
Okay, so we are going to give it about 10 more minutes. I'm going to turn it around because it's still a little wet. So I'm going to let it dry out a little bit for about 10 more minutes because it says to give it about 35 minutes. So we're 20 minutes in and we're going to add 10 more minutes. And now I think that we've got this soup to a place where we can go ahead and process it so that you can see how that works. Okay. Yeah, get rid of those. Get those out of the way. Like I said, we usually let this cook longer, but we'll go ahead and process it. So to process it, I want to put it in the Vitamix, which I imagine many of you have Vitamixes. And we need another pot to pour it into. So this is the world's best scooper. It is by Pizza Craft. It is called a pizza sauce spreader. Unfortunately, they seem to be out of business. So I have not been able to find, I was going to give one to Donna, but I haven't been able to find any more. So that's what it is. And it's 4 ounces, and it is a wonderful, wonderful device. So we're going to start with about half a container, and we're going to add about half of the wonderful basil. And we're going to put the top on here and have our holder, and then go over to the Vitamix thingy. All right. Oh, that basil. Can you smell the basil, Donna?
Yes.
Love basil. Yes, really nice. Nice flavor. When I did the cooking school in Orange County, my son and his wife and my grandchildren were living in Orange County, and they do not want to grind up our rind. They were living in Orange County, so the way it worked is that we got to finish our lovely cooking, and then we got to take home the leftovers, and that was what we had for dinner that evening with them, which was very nice. They enjoyed that very much. Unfortunately, they couldn't afford to buy a house in Orange County, and they moved to Texas. So they're very happy in the Dallas area, and I miss them. My grandchildren are 10 and 12 now. Okay, let's see here. For this, yeah, they're 10 and 12. All right, that's good. That's good. Let's see how that is. Got it a little bit too full, so I don't want to splash all over the world. The other thing that is very helpful when you're cooking is to have the right kind of equipment.
Have it nearby.
And have it nearby. I have more equipment than I know what to do with. But I do end up using quite a lot of it. So, all right, so here we've got another. Set. That section. Okay. And we'll go ahead and just process this last little dab. All right, so now you can see here is tomato basil soup. We're going to use our handy little thing again. Clean up my mess. Oh. So the next step is to put our soup in the ramekins. And the way that we do this, and obviously we have a lot more soup than we need, but I'm only going to do 6 ramekins because I'm having 6 people for dinner. And then the remaining soup, I'll freeze. And I'll also give some to Donna to take home with her. So. Okay, so we fill the little ramekins, not quite, but almost to the top. And this is a 4-ounce container, and these are 4-ounce ramekins. So I've got my egg, and we take the egg and we kind of put it around the top just so that it'll stick, because we want the puff pastry to stick around the top. So we do that. Almost finished over there. We take our puff pastry and we squeeze it nicely. I've already cut one sheet into 9 pieces. And you just kind of squeeze it on the top. This makes a beautiful setting for a dinner party, because you can set these on the plate. Then I take a poker and put little holes in the top. Vent holes. Now I hear my wonderful galette, so let's see what it's doing. Yeah. Ta-da! What do you think, Suzanne?
Oh, that is gorgeous.
Isn't that pretty? What do you think?
We are all salivating.
Oh, it's so beautiful.
There's our galette. It's all done. Okay. That was about 30 minutes in a 375 oven. Now I have a convection oven, so it runs a little bit hotter So 300 to 400, 375 to 400 is good, depending on what kind of oven you have. So back to our ramekins. We just take our egg. I don't put any water in the egg. I just use the plain egg. Makes it have a nice golden color, which is very pretty. And I'm not going to bake this now because these are for dinner tonight. So I'll pop this tray in the refrigerator. And then when it's time to do dinner, I'll take them out. I'm gonna put them aside. So that you can see how it looks, however, I had made 3 others with ahead of time with some tomato basil soup that I had, and this is what they look like. And the way I serve them, let's see, Donna, can you bring the iPad to the dining room so
sure.
that they can see? Because we're almost finished.
Mhm.
I want to show you how we do the serving. So I serve them on little plates with the doilies, and I get a little, so this is the way when you invite people to come sit down for dinner, this is what they find, is a place setting with the hot soup at their place, so that when everyone is seated and it's time to start the dinner, they have their first course all nice and hot.
Donna, tip down a little. We couldn't see. There you go. A little more, Donna.
So
There you go.
here we are.
It looks beautiful. Bravo.
So that's it. I hope that all of you will try these puff pastry extravaganzas. And this is always a hit at a dinner party. And it has a practical purpose with the puff pastry of keeping the soup hot.
Now,
And
Marguerite,
that is wonderful.
You prepared that in advance, but would you typically have that out of the oven maybe just 10 minutes before
Correct.
sitting down?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
I prepared it in advance because we didn't have time to wait to bake it.
Right.
But I wanted people to see the presentation.
Okay. Okay. So about 10 minutes before you were going to serve it. Okay.
You need to bake it for about 20 minutes.
Okay.
Until it's nice and golden.
Well, while you were moving from one venue to the other, I posted in the chat, I hope everyone will open it. I posted a photo of one of the gorgeous buffets you did, Marguerite, for the Kukra Kusia reception. And in it, there's this, right up front in that photo is the little potatoes with the sour cream and caviar.
Yes.
And as well as the tomato basil mozzarella skewers that you like to do.
Yes, the caprese skewers.
Yeah, caprese skewers. And then I think over on the right is your baked brie. So all of these are wondrous things that Marguerite has done for us before, and I hope you all enjoy taking a look at that. But Marguerite, this was delightful. Are there any other questions from members?
I think, Suzanne, those recipes are in the cookbook.
Yes, they are.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Linda, you're new with us. You may not know, but the Retirement Association produced a cookbook from all of our food demos. And I think we still have a few copies left. When we did the large production, we sold them to all of our members, but there's still a few copies left. So if you're interested in purchasing one, it's $20 to the Retirement Association, and we mail it out to you. And there are hundreds of recipes in there from all our different food demos.
Oh, that sounds great.
Yeah, really, really fun.
Okay.
We'll have to do an update because we've done a number of these food demos since we published that book. So we should do an update.
Well, I think we're finished, and it's about, it was, let's see, yeah, about an hour.
Yeah.
So I hope everybody's enjoyed it, and bon appetit.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Thank you. All right. We look forward to seeing you all in our future food demos. Thank you. And thank you, Donna, for your assistance.
My pleasure.
Absolutely.
Okay. Bye-bye.